Well, the Denver Broncos preseason has come to a close. And look, I know not a lot of people want to put a ton of stock into preseason in regards to what it's going to forecast for the regular season, but I think this has got to be the most productive and most revealing preseason for the Denver Broncos in, I don't know, maybe even since Super Bowl 50. Thought it was very productive. Think we learned a lot about the depth of this team, which may be a little bit better than some people had initially thought. And I think Sean Payton's settling into a bit of a groove as he molds this franchise in his direction and in his vision. Good stuff from the Denver Broncos today as they take down the Arizona Cardinals in the final game of the preseason. Just a couple of weeks out now from the real deal. 38-12 your final score, and we'll break it all down right here on your Locked On Broncos postcast. Let's get into it, folks.
You are Locked On Broncos postcast, powered by Mile High Sports, part of Locked On Sports Denver, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well out there on this Sunday evening. I am your host, Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Media by AP. And this is your Locked On Broncos postcast, the second installment of the Locked On Broncos postcast. And I am fired up to be here with you guys today, talking some Denver Broncos football. I'm a little bit more excited for 2 weeks from now when we get to dissect some real regular season NFL football. But I did think that today was yet another good day at the office, for lack of a better phrase, for the Denver Broncos, in particular, quarterback Zach Wilson. And I have got plenty of thoughts on Zach Wilson as he showed out today. The Denver Broncos defense looked pretty good. And an interesting type of, dare I say, showcase game for the Denver Broncos. So we'll break it all down here on today's episode of your Locked On Broncos postcast. But before we get into it, folks, make sure to subscribe to the Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. This is my second show of the day. I did the Locked On Rockies postcast. Rockies got embarrassed today, 10-3 by the New York Yankees. But make sure to subscribe so that way you guys never miss an episode. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies postcast, the Locked On Broncos postcast, as well as the Locked On Buffs postcast, which will be debuting on Thursday as well as the Colorado Buffaloes get ready for their first game of the season. So looking forward to it. We're going to have a good time, and let's go ahead and dive on into it. But today's episode of your Locked On Broncos postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. More from our friends over at FanDuel in just a minute. And I'm also, since this is these Locked On postcasts are in partnership with Mile High Sports, which is my full-time job out here in Denver, Colorado, I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from Troy Rank of the Denver Post, who does his Broncos podcast for us at Mile High Sports, towards either in the middle or the end of the show. I thought Troy had some really good thoughts and details about some of the bubble watch, some of the players, and kind of just the general direction in which this roster might be conformed. And why not hear it from the man himself, from the Denver Post? This guy's been around the block, has covered the Broncos in depth as much as anybody in this town. So I wanted you guys to get that perspective. I'll give you my opinion as well, and let's have at it. But for anyone watching live right now, drop some comments. Let me know what you think. How did the Denver Broncos perform today? Did you like what you saw on the field? What was your favorite aspect of what you saw from the Broncos today? What do you think they need to work on? What are your concerns? Let me know in the comment section, and let's have some fun here on your Locked On Broncos postcast. I think we've got to start with Zach Wilson, though. He was phenomenal. And for the sake of going in chronological order, Jarrett Stidham was the starting quarterback for this game, and he came out and led the team down the field. It was a scoring drive in his first and only series of the game. Jarrett Stidham, 2 for 4 passing on that drive, 28 yards, including a 14-yard catch and run for rookie receiver Devon Vele on 4th and 2. So nice to see Jarrett Stidham in the very limited sample size, which I think speaks volumes, get the job done. and, look the part per se as what is likely going to be the Denver Broncos backup quarterback. But if you could see here in the top corner, I have, is Zach Wilson QB2? Like what is Zach Wilson's future with the Denver Broncos? And I know that there's been plenty of speculation about, will the Broncos carry 3 quarterbacks? Will they carry 2 on the active roster and then put the third guy, the odd man out, on the practice squad and kind of keep him around that way? And I think it was not this previous week, but the week before, Diana Rossini of The Athletic was in town, and she had that sit-down interview with Sean Payton. I should have clipped it so I could have played it on the show. But, Sean Payton essentially was just giddy, absolutely hyped up and pumped up about the prospect of Zach Wilson and how he's really been coming along with the Denver Broncos at training camp. Now, I was at 2/3 of training camp before I was down and out with a sickness, and so I had the opportunity to see the quarterback competition up close and personal. And to me, it was always Bo Nix, draw the line, and then kind of go from there. I think Zach Wilson's natural athletic ability is better than Jarrett Stidham's, but I think Jarrett Stidham's maybe kind of like Jarrett Stidham to me. How can I compare this? Jarrett Stidham's like the ham and cheese sandwich, right? Like, who doesn't like a ham and cheese sandwich or a turkey and cheese sandwich? Just like basic, got your Wonder Bread, your American cheese, your ham from the little packaging, boom. Nothing wrong with it. It's a classic, right? The ham and cheese or the peanut butter and jelly, whatever you want to say. Zach Wilson's like the Italian sub, right? Got some complexity to it, or the cheesesteak. He's got that flair. He's got that ability to wow you at times. And I think we saw that over the course of the game today. Zach Wilson with some incredible play at the quarterback position, showcasing that athleticism that led to him being the number 2 overall pick in the drafts to the New York Jets just a handful of seasons ago. Now, we all know that, Zach Wilson, it didn't work out in New York, and they obviously tried to go baptism by fire with him when he was drafted. It never clicked, right? And naturally today, when you're playing in the preseason, you're going up against, backups and whatnot. You're not going against the ones, for a majority of your outing today if you're Zach Wilson. And, you would hope that the performance is going to be better than what you've seen from him with the Jets and whatnot. And I just thought Zach Wilson was absolutely phenomenal today. 16 for 25, 251 passing yards, an average of 10 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns. And to me, the biggest thing, 0 interceptions for Zach Wilson. You love to see that. He had a passer rating of 123.9. And when it comes down to the quarterback conversation, again, anyone watching live, let me know what you guys think. How do you think the Broncos should handle the quarterback competition? Who should be the backup? Who should be the odd man out on the practice squad, whatever it might be? But my guy, Cody Rourke, and all of you guys that listen to the standard Locked On Broncos podcast, are used to Cody. You guys are used to Sayers takes and whatnot. But Cody already published a story for us online at milehighsports.com if you guys want to go check it out. And he made the comparison, and I saw this, on social media, on Twitter as well throughout the course of the game, that maybe the real long – Zach Wilson played essentially every drive for the Broncos offense except for the first one. Maybe that's more akin to like what the Denver Broncos did at the end of the preseason last year with tight end Albert Okunebuwam. Alberto. I can never say that last name. I apologize, Albert, if you're, all that good stuff. But Alberto is what I like to call him. That's a tongue twister for sure. But you remember, extended looks, drawing up plays specifically to showcase him. It just looked like today Sean Payton was setting Zach Wilson up for success. And that's why I also put in the bullet points here on the rundown for today's show that Sean Payton is settling into a groove as Broncos head coach. I think you're seeing the offense complexion come to life, the play design, from when Bo Nix was in there last week to Stidham to Wilson, there's a level of familiarity across the board, where things last year, obviously with Russell Wilson, were discombobulated and it was a lot of improvisation, not a lot of scripted throws, right? A lot of it was just all over the place. And I just think you're seeing the identity of this Denver Broncos offense and the defense as well. We got to give credit where credit is due. The defense I think is going to be much improved this year too. You're seeing the overall identity of this team, I think, start to round into form. But, as it pertains to the quarterback stuff, did Zach Wilson, what did they get him for? A 5th round pick? Was it 5th or 6th round pick? If I remember off the top of my head, it was chump change in regards to get him. Did he just boost his trade value? Does a team like the Minnesota Vikings or, some of these other teams that maybe a quarterback gets hurt early in the season, Did they just look at Zach Wilson and say, you know what, maybe Sean Payton's got something figured out here? I even saw that Chris Harris Jr. had put it out on Twitter that, he was just kind of rushed into this. The natural talent is there for Zach Wilson. I think it's from the neck up a little bit, but when you've got a guy like Sean Payton that knows what he's doing, knows how to play toward the strengths and the weaknesses of a guy like Zach Wilson, you're pretty happy with the results today. So again, for Zach, 16 of 25, 251 passing yards, an average of 10 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 123.9. Did take 4 sacks today, which you don't like to see. That's my only, and this is backup quarterback talk, right? It's not like you're asking Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson to be your starter, but the one constant with Zach Wilson throughout his NFL career is when that pass rush is in his face, man, it's a little bit of a circus act when he's running around out there in the pocket or scrambling outside of the pocket. So you want to try to see him refine his game a little bit, but I thought Zach Wilson was good today as well. We got to talk about Damari Mathis. We'll do that coming up here in the second segment. He left the game very early today, which is unfortunate. I believe on the second defensive play of the game for the Broncos. He went down to the turf with the trainers at his side. Cart quickly came out. Whenever the cart comes out, that's always going to rub you the wrong way a little bit. So hopefully Damari Mathis is okay. We can kind of break down that impact. But we also got to talk about the roster complexion here, guys. The Broncos have got themselves some real decisions to make in the wide receiver room. They've got to figure out who's going to be on the roster, who's not going to be on the roster. Brandon Johnson had himself a day today. And, he could potentially be a guy that is on the outside looking in when it comes to the roster cuts. Same with the running back group. Samaje Perine, what's his status? What's his future with this Denver Broncos organization? We shall see. So, all right, why don't we hit our first break? When we come back, let's dive into that conversation. Let's take a look at the roster. Let's take a look at some guys that stood out today on the football field, but had to get the Zach Wilson stuff off the chest early because I just thought he was phenomenal. And again, yes, it is, the preseason. It's against the Arizona Cardinals, right? No ones, all that kind of stuff. But I did think Zach Wilson really looked sharp today. So let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments. Let me know what you thought about the game today. But we'll hit a break, come back, and do just that right here on your Locked On Broncos postcast. Back in just a few minutes, folks. All right, you guys, let me tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn real quick, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are the right person and right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and easier. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn's users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier. 2.5+ small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Guys, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Be sure to check out our friends over at LinkedIn and use that link, linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Let them know that the Locked On Broncos postcast sent you, and happy hiring, folks. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Broncos postcast. I am your host, Aniello Piro. Hope everybody is doing well out there on this Sunday afternoon, or I guess it's evening now, technically, on the 25th day of August here, the year 2024. And so looking forward to continuing to break down this Denver Broncos preseason game. They take down the Arizona Cardinals today, 38-12, but also ready to kind of turn the page and move on from the preseason and get ready for the regular season, get ready for Seattle week 1. It's going to be, I'm so excited to see what this Denver Broncos team looks like in the regular season. So you can follow me on social media at Media by AP. Also, guys, make sure to subscribe to the brand new Locked On Sports Denver YouTube channel. So that way you guys never miss an episode of the Locked On Broncos postcast. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also the host of the Locked On Rockies postcast, as well as the Locked On Buffs podcast or postcast. So plenty of post-game shows, plenty of instant reaction to be had. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you guys never miss an episode. But okay, let's talk about Damari Mathis here real quick. And as we mentioned, he left the game this Sunday in the first quarter with an apparent ankle injury, which just stinks. It happened on the second defensive play of the game. And Damari Mathis is one of those guys that, I think he's really carving out a role for himself within this Denver Broncos defense. And I'm sure that the thought wasn't for him to have to play a super extended amount of time today. And it's just an absolute shame that on the second defensive play of the game, he goes down on the turf. Trainers, as I mentioned, rushing out to his side, exits on the cart. He's a third-year cornerback, and he's had a pretty strong offseason in training camp. He's impressed, and he's in the middle of the competition with Riley Moss for the second cornerback or the second starting cornerback position. And now it seems like by default, and I think it was going to be Riley Moss anyway. I think he's the guy that's had the most separation and has looked the best overall. Throughout the course of this period, kind of ramping up. I think Damari Mathis is a good player. I just think Riley Moss is impressed a little bit more. But now I would imagine that this is, assuming that he's going to be out for at least a couple of weeks, I think that, that essentially kind of solidifies that. I think Riley Moss will be CB2 when it's all said and done. But, earlier this week as well, Vance Joseph was talking about how versatility is going to be very important for the Broncos at that cornerback position. So to lose a guy like Damari Mathis, we don't have a full prognosis. We don't know the full scope or the depth of the injury here. But losing him for any extended period of time is going to hamper the Denver Broncos secondary here a little bit. And look, I know that there's been some depth questions, and talking about that versatility that Vance Joseph mentioned, like you want to be able to get those guys healthy and ready to go so that way they can be locked in and ready to make an impact for you guys on a day in, day out basis. But, Levi Wallace and Chris Abram-Drain came in. Levi Wallace was also starting alongside Damari Mathis. So Riley Moss did not get the start, which I think also tells you all you need to know. But then it was rookie Chris Abrams-Drain who came in replacement of Damari Mathis. So we'll have to see what happens. But again, the third-year corner, who I think has really done a good job of kind of carving out a nice little role for himself in the last couple of seasons, or in his first 2 seasons with the Broncos in the NFL level. He goes down with a brutal ankle injury on the second defensive play of the game. So we'll keep you guys updated. Be sure to go to milehighsports.com. Check out my guy, Cody Rourke, who you guys all know and love right here on the Locked On Broncos podcast as well. I'm sure he'll break it down with Sayre when they do their post-game show too. So we'll see how everything else progresses. I think another thing that stood out today was the linebacking core. And that was a position that I was a little questionable about. Like, obviously, you have Alex Singleton, who's been one of the better comeback stories in the NFL in recent memory, but a little suspect about the depth beyond Alex Singleton. And, we'll have to see how the Broncos go about that. But it looks like Cody Barton might be the guy that starts next to him, throughout the course of the season, at least to start. Justin Stranad as well and Jonas Griffith are going to be guys that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Pro Football Focus obviously ranked Jonas Griffith as one of the best players in all the preseason. I think after week 2 it was. So he's been standing out of Utah and whatnot. But I think those are the 3 guys you're going to want to keep an eye on. Which one's going to kind of separate themselves from the bunch is going to be interesting for sure. But I think, with guys like Jonas Griffith and Justin Stranad, they're going to be especially effective against the run, and they're going to be good at kind of clogging up some of those holes. So maybe you look for some more versatility with a guy like Cody Barton that can kind of flex the outside portion of the field as well. But I do think that there's some good depth there at the linebacker position, maybe more than we had thought initially. And, we're going to have to see. But I think the other interesting part of this preseason so far is the amount of rookies that have stood out. Guys like Devon Vele, Jonah Ellis, who I just mentioned, Audric Estime's impressed. We just talked about Chris Abram-Drain, who came in and played solid in place of Damari Mathis. Tyler Beatty, Nate Adkins, Jordan Jackson, Keidron Smith has made some huge plays. Lavelle Bailey had a 94-yard house call pick 6 today. So, clearly the Broncos have a good amount of youth that are going out there and trying to make the most of their opportunities. And, that's that's also the nice part with the preseason, right? Is you get a look to see, there's some guys that might become future starters in this league. Maybe not for the Broncos, but, are future legitimate impact type players, whether it's in a secondary type role or in a starting type role. But I think the rookie class this year, from what we saw in the preseason, some nice depth there and a nice mix of players, whether it be the in the secondary, the wide receiver position, the running back room as well. And, the Broncos, as I had mentioned, are going to have some tough questions that they're going to have to answer in regards to who's in and who's out on the 53-man roster here at the wide receiver position and the running back room. So I'm very curious to see how that all plays out. But I think, this is a good problem to have when you have what appears to be a little bit of a surplus of young depth and young impact type players on your roster that have all shined out at some point or another throughout the course of the preseason. I know there's a lot of teams around the league that are going to be looking at some of those skill positions to see who the Denver Broncos end up deciding to move on from and who they decide to keep on the roster for the season. So, a lot of moving parts with this Broncos team, but I think when it's all said and done, I think they've got something here. So I'm excited to see how it shakes out. And between the quarterback play, the linebackers, the secondary today, just a lot of good stuff as the Broncos look, I think, better than expected in the preseason. That's the other thing, is I do think that they looked a lot better than at least I thought, and maybe some people around the league and the media as well have thought as well. So like to see that just attacking this Denver Broncos defense was today, and aggressive. Same thing with the offense, right? It just looks better. It looks a little bit more fluid. It looks like things are just a little bit easier. Like last year with the offense, things looked a little bit forced. Things were discombobulated throughout the course of these games. And look, at the end of the day, we'll have to see what this club looks like during the regular season. The preseason only means so much, right? I think this was an important preseason for the Broncos because of the amount of youth and the different kind of turnover that is going on throughout the course of this roster. But I think for all intents and purposes, I think the Broncos are in a good spot right now as they are in the middle of this retooling or reshaping of the organization under Sean Payton. So we'll have to see how it pays off. But all right, let's hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll put a bow in the show. When we come out of the break, I'm going to go ahead and play a couple of minutes here from Troy Rank's podcast from Mile High Sports earlier this week, just because I give you guys my opinion, but I want you guys to get another opinion as well about the roster construction. And who better to hear it from than Troy Rank himself, the columnist for the Denver Post. And this Locked On Broncos postcast is in conjunction with Mile High Sports. And Troy Rank is doing his Mile High Sports Broncos podcast for us throughout the course of the season. So you guys can see what that looks like, what it listens like. And if you guys are wanting to listen to more of Troy, make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel as well, so you can get some more Broncos coverage. But we'll hit a break, come back, do just that. We'll play Troy out of the break, and then I'll give you guys some of my closing thoughts as we get ready to turn the page to the regular season as the Denver Broncos today taking down the Arizona Cardinals 38-12. All right, hit a break, come back, and continue along with the conversation right here on your Locked On Broncos postcast. Stick with us, folks. All right, you guys, let me tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, and this is one that I promise you you're going to want to listen up for, because if you're a football fan, you're going to want to get in on this. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something that's a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. And guys, NFL Sunday Ticket and NFL season, it's like peanut butter and jelly, guys. You have to get this promo from our friends over at FanDuel. Let me repeat it one more time. I got to say it. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That means you're going to be able to watch all the out-of-market games. You're going to be able to see every ounce of action throughout the course of the season. And I'm an active FanDuel user. I like to chef up my little anytime touchdown score parlays on Sunday morning. I like to bet my sides. I like to bet my totals. And like I said, FanDuel is my personal favorite sportsbook. I'm already a user, and I'm getting 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So when I bet $5 on FanDuel, be sure to check them out. Let them know that Locked On Broncos sent you, and good luck on your wagers this season. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Broncos postcast. Let's get into this little clip here. Few minutes here. Troy Renck of the Denver Post on his Broncos podcast for Mile High Sports, talking about the roster complexion. I think we saw a lot of this stuff play out. We'll come back. I'll give you guys my opinion, but here's Troy Renck's opinion on the Denver Broncos roster.
Who are some of the notable names on the bubble? And that's what I want to talk, because these are names you would recognize. And we talked briefly about this last pod. Samaje Perine, it does not look like he's going to be able to squeeze a spot onto this roster, because they love Audric Estime. Javonte Williams is the starter, and Jaleel McLaughlin is the change of pace back. I don't know where the room would be for Samaje Perine. And he was nice for them last year, especially in the 2-minute drill. They would miss him, but he's a little bit of a luxury item. I would think they're going to try to trade him if they can. Maybe you can get a 6th, 7th rounder for him. He can help somebody. He can still play. But remember, they're going younger. They're trending younger. And they have 2 backs in Javonte Williams and Estime, who in their mind, we'll see if they're right, can do the same things as Perine. So I think he could be the odd man out. You look on that defensive line. Matt Henningsen, one of the smartest guys in the NFL. Masters in chemical engineering. The guy's brilliant. And he's had a couple of nice years for the Broncos. But he's now on the bubble. And I think he makes it. But Sean Payton has really gone to bat. Enrique. And you remember he was suspended for a year. And he stood by him. And Payton, listen, his daughter works for a gambling site, and he likes to stick it to the league. He doesn't think the league's punishments are fair, certainly, going all the way back to his own punishment for Bountygate. So he's been there and stuck up for Enrique. They could have easily just moved on from him. Can he do enough this week in week 3 to stick? For me, almost have to project it, because Henningsen week 1 would be better. But keep an eye on Henningsen and Enrique. Justin Sternad has just been a gamer. He's one of those guys that survived all the coaching changes. He's a special teams guy from Wake Forest. Missed first year when he broke his wrist, or cartilage in his wrist he tore. But he's just been dependable, smart. I think he makes it because of his special teams value. But another name to keep an eye on there, could he be on the bubble? And then you look at receiver. Lil Jordan Humphrey and Brandon Johnson. Both guys who played significant roles at times for the Broncos last year. Lil Jordan Humphrey had one of the best plays, a 52-yard touchdown last year, and Brandon Johnson had 3 touchdowns, including a Hail Mary against Washington. He's a solid player, but last year we were talking about him all the time, making plays in camp, and he's just not there now because Devon Bailey has passed him, frankly.
All right, so there's a clip from Troy Renck's Broncos podcast, which you guys can go check out on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. Just wanted to get some other thoughts out there from a respected voice who's been covering the team for a long, long time. And I agree with a lot of what Troy said. I think the one position in particular that's going to be interesting for the Broncos is wide receiver, because they have an embarrassment of riches, right? And it looks like guys that were contributing last year, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, they just might be on the outside looking in. And Brandon Johnson had a sweet connection today with Zach Wilson. I mean, Brandon Johnson, in my opinion, looked the part out there for the Denver Broncos. So I'm going to be very curious to see which direction the Denver Broncos end up going at wide receiver. Cortland Sutton's WR1. Tim Patrick's going to make the team. I think Devon Bailey's done enough throughout the course of the preseason and training camp to warrant a roster spot, and that's where I'm thinking maybe those Lil Jordan Humphreys and the Brandon Johnsons of the world might be on the outside looking in, maybe even a Marvin Mims type. I don't know. We'll find out on Tuesday. And remember, it's not like they used to do the roster cuts in waves. I forget the exact numbers, but it would go from 90 to, I think, 75 and then down to 53 or something along those lines. Now it's just going to be one big wave of cuts. So the Denver Broncos are going to have to part ways with some of these guys, in that deep wide receiver room. And same thing with the running back room. I think a veteran back like Samaje Perine, very much on the outside looking in. And, that's because they have Javonte Williams, who's going to probably be your starting running back. He's looked great. You've got Jaleel McLaughlin in the backfield as well, who could be your secondary running back. They love Audric Estime, as you heard Troy confirm there. We've seen that throughout the course of the preseason. And then also, if we're just reading between the lines a little bit, looking at the playing time today, Blake Watson and Tyler Beatty getting a lion's share of the production. Audric Estime had 5 touches today, but, clearly not a ton of playing time for him. And just looking at that wide receiver room, there was a lot of guys, not even just the wide receiver room, but a lot of different guys, making plays today and securing catches. Michael Bandy had 2 for 26. Nate Atkins, 2 for 20. Devon Vele, who I mentioned, had 1 for 14. Audric Estime, 1 for 14 as well. Lucas Kroll, 1 for 10. Philip Dorsett, nothing across the board. But they have a number of different playmakers on offense that they're going to have to figure out who's in and who's out. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out and which direction they end up going. Before we get out of here, a couple of updates. While Troy was playing there on the screen, I was able to look some stuff up for you guys. It looks like Sean Payton came out after the game and said that Damari Mathis's ankle injury appears to not be anything significant. That's from Mike Kliss. So you'll love to see that. So fingers crossed that Damari Mathis is going to be ready to go for week 1. Hopefully he's not that banged up, and hopefully he's able to get himself right, because they're going to need that versatility and they're going to need that depth in the secondary for sure. And then also from Mike Kliss, Sean Payton talking at the podium that there are a, quote, handful of positions, end quote, that the Broncos will be considering for waiver pickups. So we know that they have an embarrassment of riches on the at the skill positions, wide receiver, running back, some secondary depth as well. I wonder which positions the Broncos will try to target. I guess it just depends on what type of talent is going to be out there on the open market. So we shall see. But good day, good preseason for the Denver Broncos overall, in my opinion. They take down the Arizona Cardinals today, 38-12. Got a good sample size. I think we've had an opportunity to see some of the depth, some of the young guys making a name for themselves. Some guys stood out more than others. And now the real work begins, right? I think a lot of this has been the ramp-up period naturally for the regular season, but now the Broncos are going to have to, dig their heels in and make some real decisions in regards to how they want to formulate this roster this season. So I'm excited about it, and we'll see how it plays out. But all right, folks, that is going to do it for me on today's episode of your Locked On Broncos Postcast. My guys, Cody and Sarah, are going to have you covered with the standard Locked On Broncos podcast as well, all throughout the week. So make sure to stay tapped in with them and subscribe to the Locked On Sports Denver YouTube channel. That way you never miss an episode of the Broncos Postcast. We've got the Buffs Postcast launching this week. And of course, we've still got the Rockies Postcast rocking and rolling no pun intended, throughout the course of Rockies baseball season. So we'll have some fun with it. Make sure to subscribe, and away we go. Good stuff from the Broncos this preseason. I think Sean Payton is settling in as Broncos head coach in a big way. Zach Wilson looked great. Great depth at some of these skill positions as well. And now we get to firmly turn the page to the regular season of the NFL. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to doing shows all season long with you guys in Broncos country out there. All right, folks, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. That's it for me. We'll talk to you guys in a couple of weeks after week 1 of the regular season for the Denver Broncos. Have a good one, folks.